Peter Williams and Bart Ehrman argue that Jesus claimed to be from the dead. Is this explanation still plausible? Bart Ehrman doesn't believe in the miraculous claims of the Bible, but Justin Bass argues that there are bedrock facts. Justin once believed the Bible was divine, but now he thinks it's just a work of human history. Justin makes the case that the historical Jesus claimed to be holy and that the resurrection was an innovative, unparalleled, unique idea that had not been known. Justin will tell us about several appearances of Jesus before his death, and Paul would have presented them to a pagan as evidence for the resurrection of Jesus. Jesus loved him and forgave him, and he can forgive you. Most New Testament historians agree that people claim to have seen the risen Jesus, but we don't know who the 500 were. Mary Magdalene and others have reported similar experiences, but we shouldn't consider them outside of other claims for other religious figures. Justin, great question, Mike. My question would be, what evidence did you bring up Islam and Mormonism? There are 11 eyewitnesses to the golden plates. For say they saw Moroni give them to Joseph Smith, for saw him, some signed affidavits, and half left the faith. For people have claimed to have seen Moroni give Joseph Smith the plates, and if you take the sources that agree with you, they're probably right. The apostles didn't see Mary and didn't expect the Messiah to rise from the dead, so how did they believe Jesus appeared to them? I think some of the evidence of Mary is that they saw something with Jesus that led them to say something completely unexpected. There are claims that other people had experiences similar to those who saw the Virgin Mary, so if you want to make an argument about Jesus being raised from the dead, you can argue about other people. Apocalyptic Jews believed that Jesus had risen from the dead, but other categories of people could have died and lived in the afterlife. The early Christians said that Jesus had risen from the dead, but their bodies were still quiet. Bart Ehrman and Justin Bass talk about whether the apocalyptic Jews' experience of Jesus being physically resurrected is evidence for a resurrection or if it's just a post hoc rationalization. I suggest you read the literature. Paul and Peter did not claim that Jesus rose from the dead but thought that Jesus had returned. Paul got this information from Christians he persecuted before they ever met. God can't break the laws of mathematics, but he can violate the laws of physics and feed things into his system for sure. Jesus was raised from the dead, and nobody outside Hasidic Jews thought it happened. You're a Christian, and you think that Jesus is the greatest thing ever, but you want to show that you're right, and you want people to know that exactly, but you're claiming that you're doing this on disinterested, and you need to be open-minded to miracles. Okay, you're using that as a historical argument for the resurrection, but you can explain why so many billions of Christians are in the world without a miraculous explanation. The Mormon Church has grown at a rate of 30 people per decade since Joseph Smith founded it, and nobody outside those people believes that it requires a miracle. Justin, could you talk about why you believe that the rise of Christianity was a fact of history that points towards the truth of the resurrection? People believe they've seen Jesus rise from the dead, and this movement now comprises easily a third of the world's population. Jesus said in the 1st century on the Mount of Olives that this message would go to all nations. The fact that billions of people today are convinced that Jesus was raised from the dead is not a historical argument for what happened to Jesus' body. We know what race Jesus desired, and we can see that what he wanted has happened. In Jordan, I met several Muslims who dreamed of Jesus and converted to Christianity. I think these visions are separate from the resurrection appearances and are another line of evidence that Jesus rose from the dead. Bob doesn't believe it happened, but 32 individuals testified that they saw Jesus. He was convinced they had dreams and visions of something like this, and there were lots of quilts involving Zeus. 8 billion people worldwide have never heard of Jesus and do not have dreams of him. Samuel Morris, a guy from Libya, listened to the voice of Jesus and survived a tribal attack. Why do you think it takes so long for God to appear to them? The crucifixion, the appearance, the triumph of Christianity, and the earth and now dreams are all claims that could be considered historical evidence for the resurrection. But what does evidence mean? And how many appearances would you need to convince somebody before they changed their mind? Final thoughts. I think the 500 is historical, especially when you look at all the appearances and all the things that have happened over the last 2,000 years. The apologists tend to get history and theology confused.